Welcome to this explainer. Today we're going to dive deep into a really landmark 2004 South African constitutional court case. It's one that fundamentally weighed national security against human dignity. We're talking about a fascinating legal battle known as Lawyers for Human Rights versus the Minister of Home Affairs, and it tackles some of the absolute biggest questions a democracy can face. So if you're interested in how laws are applied at the literal edges of a country, you are definitely in the right place. Let's get into it. Okay, I want you to imagine a scenario. You're physically standing at customs, or maybe you're stuck on a boat in a harbor, but a border agent hasn't stamped your passport yet. Legally speaking, are you actually inside the country? And more importantly, does that country's constitution protect you? It's a highly provocative question, and it sits right at the heart of the tension between a nation's sovereign right to control its borders and the universal application of fundamental human rights. Section 1. The Border Security Dispute, Context and the Immigration Act. To really understand the stakes here, we first need to look at the framework established by the Immigration Act of 2002. Now, what's actually kind of fascinating is how narrow the definition of an illegal foreigner is in this context. It specifically targets those without valid permits or authorization to enter. Section 10 of the Act makes it super clear. You need a temporary residence permit to be admitted. If you don't have one, or say you fall into a prohibited category, like for instance carrying an infectious disease, you immediately become classified as an illegal foreigner. And that brings us to a really surprising legal quirk. The law isn't just talking about seaports here. Under this specific definition, you could be sitting on the tarmac in a Boeing 747 commercial airliner, and in the eyes of this law, yep, congratulations, you're on a ship. So when we talk about people being held on a ship, that legal definition applies to anyone arriving at any port of entry before they are formally let in by an immigration officer. So the really crucial point here is the sort of two-tiered system we end up with. Basically, if you're already inside the country, you get strict safeguards. You're protected from being held for more than 30 days without a court warrant confirming your detention. But if you're just arriving at a port or you're stuck on a ship, well, that 30-day court safeguard completely vanishes. It's a seemingly much stricter, much less protected reality for those who are stuck right at the literal edge of the nation. Section 2. Fighting for public interest. Who gets to sue? This whole situation builds into a major legal challenge. Before they could even argue about border security, the government actually questioned whether Lawyers for Human Rights even had the right to be in court at all. But the court recognized a really harsh practical reality. I mean, think about it. Try mounting a complex constitutional challenge when you don't know the local laws. You have zero money, absolutely no family support, and the ship you're detained on is scheduled to leave port in under 24 hours. It's just entirely unrealistic. These are transient, deeply vulnerable individuals who probably never even heard of a South African NGO, let alone know how to go about hiring an attorney. Because of those severe vulnerabilities, the court granted Lawyers for Human Rights public interest standing under Section 38D of the Constitution. And honestly, it was a brilliant piece of reasoning. The court basically said, look, if we don't allow organizations to act objectively on behalf of these people, hundreds of vulnerable individuals could be detained unconstitutionally, deported quickly, and the law would simply never get tested. Leaving that unchecked, it would completely negate the very values the Constitution is built on. Section 3. Do rights cross borders? The applicability of the Constitution. All right, this brings us to the core philosophical and legal battleground of the whole case. So, does the South African Bill of Rights protect someone physically in the country's waters or airports, but who hasn't been legally admitted? The government made a really fascinating linguistic argument here. They pointed straight to Section 7.1 of the Constitution, which states that the Bill of Rights enshrines the rights of all people in our country. Their argument? Individuals at ports of entry who haven't passed customs aren't actually in our country yet. Therefore, the constitutional rights just don't apply to them. But the court? They fundamentally disagreed. Justice Jacob issued this incredibly powerful statement, basically establishing that human dignity doesn't just evaporate at the customs desk. I mean, think about it. If someone commits a crime on a ship in South African waters, the local laws absolutely apply to them, right? Therefore, the court reasoned, the protections of those laws have to apply to them too. The court really anchored its entire stance on a single, highly deliberate word used in the Constitution: everyone. Sections 12 and 35 don't say every citizen or every legally admitted resident. By using the word everyone, the Constitution actively extends procedural safeguards against arbitrary detention and the right to bodily security directly to foreign nationals within the territory, and that is regardless of their legal immigration status. Section 4. The 30-day catch, the majority judgment. Let's dive into exactly how the majority of the court resolved this glaring loophole. First up, they had to tackle the fear of arbitrary detention. The High Court had previously worried that an immigration officer could just point at someone for no reason at all and declare them an illegal foreigner. But Justice Yacoub clarified that an officer's say-so is not absolute. The law inherently requires reasonable suspicion. An officer must have valid, justifiable reasons to suspect someone is an illegal foreigner before they can order their detention on a ship. This is crucial because it prevents that power from being completely arbitrary. But what about those time limits we talked about earlier? Well, to fix the constitutional defect without just throwing out the entire law, the court practically read in a solution. They ruled that if a person is detained on a ship for longer than 30 calendar days, the state must now step in. They have to get a court order to extend that detention, up to a maximum of 90 days. This fix directly mirrored the protections that already existed for people inside the country, neatly patching that legal loophole. Section 5. The dissenting opinion. Justice Madala's perspective. Now, it's really important to note that not all the judges agreed the law was defective in the first place. Justice Madala offered a very compelling counter-perspective. He argued impartially that the state's existing framework was actually entirely valid. He pointed out a very practical reality. Holding someone on a ship serves a completely legitimate government purpose of immigration control. Plus, the length of that detention is largely dictated by when the ship actually leaves the harbor, a timeline that is completely out of the state's control. In his view, since the master of the ship brought the undocumented individuals there, it's totally fair and equitable that the master bears the responsibility of detaining and removing them. So, what's the ultimate takeaway from this explainer? Well, it's a masterful balancing act. You see, the ruling didn't destroy border security, not at all. The state absolutely maintained its right to inspect passengers and deny entry to illegal foreigners. But crucially, it enforced a non-negotiable judicial safety net. It ensured that no human being is just indefinitely detained in the shadows without some form of court oversight. As you reflect on the actual mechanics of immigration law and the true territorial reach of a constitution, I want to leave you with this final, enduring question to ponder. How exactly should democracies balance secure borders with universal human dignity? It's a tension literally every modern democracy has to navigate. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive today, and keep asking the hard questions.